a lot of these people these days are saying, hey, you know what? You should give 0 Fs, and that's to be celebrated. And there are some popular books that say, hey, you know what? Don't give any Fs at all. If you got any Fs lying around, keep them in your pocket. Don't give them. Our next guest says the opposite. They actually should give an F. In fact, he wrote a book called Give a F, actually. His name is Dr. Alex Willis. Dr. Wills, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be here, to meet you.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. All right, so talk to me. Why should we give an F, and what does that mean to you?
Well, most of us have read The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. It's a pretty entertaining, best-selling book. However, after reading it a couple times, I started thinking it's not really working, and it kind of flies in the face of the evidence-based psychotherapy that I've been doing with my patients. So on deeper exploration, I started to wonder, what if we don't try to suppress our emotions? What if we let all of the Fs fly and see what happens? And some good things can come from that.
I already find what you're saying fascinating. So talk to me about it. Okay, so we let our emotions fly. I'm already in. Then what happens? Why is that a good thing?
Well, if you think about it, by the time you have the thought, I'm not going to give an F, you've already given an F. So we're kind of gaslighting ourselves by trying to control emotions that we're already having. So instead, if we practice what I call radical emotional acceptance, then we can get more in tune with reality, especially our inner emotional reality, to then make the best decisions for our lives based on our emotional wisdom.
Okay, so now we're having a further conversation. Radical emotional acceptance. Sounds radical.
Yes.
Tell me more about it.
Yeah, I divide my book into 5 steps of radical emotional acceptance. That's also the website, radicalemotionalacceptance.com. And it's a simple way that the layperson can follow the steps to have a better relationship with their own emotions in real time. Contrary to popular belief, giving an F doesn't have to take 5 hours out of your day. Instead, you can give an F in 10 seconds and you can go back about your business instead of trying to do all that mental gymnastics to kind of suppress it and say, you know what, I'm just not going to give an F about that guy who rolled his eyes at me. And then we have nightmares about it later that night or something, you know?
Okay, so that makes sense because number one, people who tell you they don't give an F, 98 out of 100 times they do. And I totally agree with you that they're giving a double F. And they're doing twice the emotions to bottle up the original emotion. Totally agreed, okay? So, but then of course the next question is, how do you express those emotions, right? So, okay, I accept it. Man, I was really angry that guy cut me off, or maybe something even worse, right? Okay, but now what am I gonna do with that anger?
Right. Anger is a great example. It's a very empowering emotion. It's easy to get in touch with anger because when you're angry, nobody's gonna F with you because you'll kill him. And so the first step is to actually realize that you have an F shield or an emotional shield, such as a defense mechanism or anger, and become curious about what is behind that shield so that you can name those more vulnerable emotions. Fast forwarding a bit, after you kind of do a little bit of inner analysis, checking in with yourself, you can then decide, do I need to do an action at all? And if so, what action do I need to do? So that we're not really controlled by the emotions, but the emotions are rather informing our decisions.
So you're making a more active decision about your emotions. Am I gonna express it this way? Am I not going to express it? What form am I gonna express it in? But what I'm not going to do is bottle it up.
Right, and you actually don't get to step 4, which is act on the F until you do sort of a little bit more of checking in with listening to the F, kind of discovering what is the wisdom that I can tap into, and then you get to make an informed decision about what to do or what not to do.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, and so you say that you got to identify the emotions, and that and we just talked about that, and because they're preventing you from experiencing joy. So how do we make the transition from, okay, I have identified that I am angry, and I'm gonna focus on how angry I am. I'm gonna figure out what to do with that anger. Okay, but when do I get to the joy part?
Well, what's interesting, it's kind of paradoxical because here I am telling people, yeah, be sad and be scared and experience hate and disgust. And people are like, nah, I don't want any of those unpleasant emotions. It's a bit paradoxical because the reason that people don't experience joy is because we're so hung up on suppressing those emotions. I'm not an angry person. I don't feel hate. I have no hate in my heart. I don't have any fear. I don't give an F. And we waste all of that energy. And so no wonder we're depressed because we're walking around lying to ourselves and gaslighting ourselves all day.
So is your thought here basically after you've processed the emotion in the appropriate way, you have closure with it and that you could move on to joy?
Yeah, I don't use the term negative emotions, but there are painful emotions and scary emotions and very unpleasant emotions, and they do hurt. And sometimes that intensity is quite high. And the goal isn't to make that pain go away. It's kind of like when you stub your toe. It's supposed to hurt like a you know what, because it's serving a purpose. That's why we still have toes. That's why we still have feet. So in a way, when we get to step 5 of radical emotional acceptance, we're trying to find sincere gratitude for the F's. How are these unpleasant, painful, scary emotions actually trying to help me? And it doesn't, it's not a magical pill that just sort of magically makes the emotions not painful. Quite the opposite. It's being okay that emotions are painful, but they serve a purpose.
Yeah. First of all, you're talking to the right guy. Okay, you found the right hombre. Because I not only process that stuff, but I try to actually enjoy the negative emotions. Sorry for calling them negative, okay? But like, so if I have pain or I have something, like I get sick and I have body weakness, right? I try to soak that in. And I go, okay, well, this is a different experience I'm feeling. And that's just as valid as anything else. And it's just as much being alive as anything else. So I try to soak it in, but I imagine that that's pretty hard for most folks.
Right, it's kind of the opposite of what we've always been trained to do our entire lives. Suck it up, let's not mope around, let's not feel sad, let's not get stuck in these negative emotions. How can we think positive? Stoicism teaches we got to minimize those negative, unpleasant emotions and maximize the positive ones. So it's quite counterintuitive and it takes a bit of coaching, which is why, I can't do psychotherapy with every single patient in the world. So the book uses fictionalized characters. So hopefully the readers will be able to find themselves within the characters and see where the rubber meets the road, because it does take a bit of coaching to help people get there, to make it real for themselves until it slowly becomes natural.
Okay, and you worked with a ton of patients. So have you seen this work? Because look, I know it's possible because I've done it myself, right? But for the skeptical viewer out there, how do you coach someone into not being angry about being angry?
I sit in a bit of a privileged position because by the time most people come to see me, they're ready for help. They're willing to try something because they've tried everything they can to just not give an F. And it hasn't worked. If it was gonna work, it would have worked by now. And so that's sort of a starting place. There's a lot of psychotherapeutic techniques that we use to try to, really meet the patient where they're at and to relate to them so that we can kind of help them see it become real in their lives. But it's such a wonderful experience to see miracles every day of people getting better because of different interventions that we get to do.
So Dr. Wills, how about the situations where you actually shouldn't give an F? So someone is judging you, right? But they're judging you in an absurd way. And we're human, so we get affected by it anyway. So an example I use sometimes is bunch of third graders mocking Albert Einstein on his physics. They're like, oh yeah, Albert, I bet E equals MC squared, right? And so is he really supposed to give an F about that? Or is there a way that we can compartmentalize and go, oh no, that I don't give an F about?
Well, if he happened to give an F about that, he does, and he can't help that. And so just accepting that is the case. But I also don't want to discount the defense mechanisms are there for a reason. Sometimes when you're in a very difficult, demanding situation, you do want to have those defense mechanisms. You don't want to just go, purely into those vulnerable emotions, because there might be, certain small periods of time where you have to power through, you have to be strong, you have to make it. So the defense mechanisms are there for a reason. But when we have time to kind of become introspective, then we can still validate those Fs that were going on underneath.
Okay, so you're saying even if it's highly absurd that you give an F, okay, but at least recognize it and understand why you do, because it might be able to break down the reason for it and help dissipate it. Do I understand it right?
Yeah, we don't really pick and choose the Fs we give. They kind of happen to us. I mean, I've had the most bizarre things come up. I'm like, why do I give an F about that? But if we greet those Fs with curiosity, then we can learn something about ourselves, learn something about the situation, and tap into that sixth sense of the emotional wisdom that we have.
Yeah, and I'm here to tell you that it works, because I mean, pre-talking to you, seeing the book, etc. This is what I've done. When I feel something, or I think something, I break it down. Where did that thought come from? Where did that feeling come from? And then once you realize where it came from, I guarantee you, at least 8 out of 10 times, it's absurd. And when you realize it's absurd, you go, oh, what am I worried about that for? Okay, so give it a shot. That's my endorsement of the book. Dr. Alex Wills, and the book is Give an F, actually. So check it out. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen. Great to meet you. Thanks.